All right, folks who are watching on YouTube, either live or later, welcome to our first ever attempt at the Rider Oversight Committee via Zoom and YouTube. For folks that are members of the public, we invite you to send comments via the chat of the YouTube page. You can go to mbtaroc.org and visit the live stream link. It will take you to the YouTube page, and there you will be able to see the live stream as well as type in questions and interact with us that way. And I hope you do. For the benefit of folks online, could we, pardon me, well, I've just verified that the live stream is working. Would you guys mind just really quick going around and just introducing yourselves while I just verify that the stream is good?
Sure, I'll start. Carl Seglem, I'm one of the co-chairs along with Stefan of the MBTA Rider Oversight Committee. Thanks for joining us this April 28th, 2020. And let me pass it next to Brian.
Thanks, Carl. Brian Langevin, public member. I'm also a co-chair along with Len of the Capital Investment and Finance Subcommittee of the ROC. And I guess I'll pass it on to Len. Or I guess I'll pass it on to Andrew.
Andrew Clark, and I am staff liaison from the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. And maybe we'll try Len again. Is he muted? Len, you're muted.
You might still be trying to get Karen on the phone. I was thinking maybe.
How about Wig? Do you care to introduce yourself, Wig?
It's okay if you don't want to, Wig, no obligation. And I am just finally getting through into the YouTube dashboard to validate that everything is actually happening the way it's supposed to. Sorry for that delay. I want to make sure that we're not doing this all for nothing.
I'm sorry about that, folks. And this
No
is
problem.
Leonard Diggins, me and the other co-chair of the Capital Investment and Finance Subcommittee. I have 10 desktops, virtual desktops here, and I reduced the screen and I couldn't find it. So. But now I have it. Yeah, I'm not gonna lose it again. Virtual desktops.
Okay, cool. I just finally got to my computer pulled up the live dashboard, and it says our stream health is meh, but it's not complaining about an error, so I won't waste any more time.
I can confirm that that's working, Stefan.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Thanks for the note, Wig. All right, tell you what, I'm going to go back to screen sharing, just simply because people might be tired of looking at me already. Let's go back to that. And I will assume that this looks good to everybody, viewable?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So if you please forgive the details of my text editor. Obviously the important part is what's in the middle. Is that font big enough? Probably not. I should probably blow that up a bit, right?
I can see it. Oh, it's nicer.
That's better.
Okay, cool. How does this work with having the agenda side by side with the message?
Works good for me.
Reason not to?
I'm fine.
Nope, that's helpful.
Looks
Uh,
good.
Okay,
And
cool.
speaking of that,
Well,
yep, first item on our agenda is public comments. And
Cool.
thanks, Stefan, we received 4 by email that you have up.
can everybody read that well enough, or would somebody like me to read that out loud to enter it into the record verbally as well as in print? I'm not sure if we need to, but actually we probably don't need to, because usually YouTube will do text to speech. I mean, speech to text. It'll usually use speech recognition.
yeah, and there's a
Oh, sorry, but it can't do speech recognition. It can't do text.
but we have the
I'm tripping
recording.
myself up on the technology here. You guys tell me, should I read it into
No.
the record, or is that good enough to show it on the
No,
screen? Okay.
I mean, I think if the YouTube's recording it, I mean that's going to be a good enough record.
Okay, cool.
But if you want to, it's your call.
Nope, no need. I'm trying to balance the screen share of this versus the audio, and this is all experiment. Again, apologies to people who are watching this later online on YouTube, because this is our first foray into Zoom for the ROC meetings, and literally the first time that I've done Zoom to YouTube. Okay.
Right. Actually, the only other I did think of a reason for maybe reading it, and maybe not so much now, but one reason to consider reading it is that if someone is connected and they are visually impaired, then they wouldn't be able to know what's in it. I would hope that they'd be able to chime in and let us know, but that is a reason for doing it. So I just put that out there in case you want to change your mind about reading it.
Happy to do so. So I'll just dive right in. This is from Amy Myrtle, Somerville, Mass. I am not able to attend your public meeting tonight due to an online class, but I wanted to send a quick public comment to request that a plan for reforesting the corridor, Green Line Railway corridor, be discussed or made public as early as possible in the process. I live in Somerville, and the tremendous loss of trees during the construction of the Green Line has a profound effect on our air quality, biodiversity, and overall health. Ensuring the lost trees are replaced, preferably with native tree species for maximum ecosystem benefits, should be a priority for the project planning. Thank you, and I hope to join one of your future meetings. Amy Myrtle, Somerville, Mass. I think maybe if I'm going to read one, I might as well just read them all, and then we'll discuss. Does that sound good, guys?
Sure.
Okay. Next one. Again, I will make the font size bigger. From Friends of the Community Path to the MBTA Rider Oversight Committee. The Friends of the Community Path are taking this public comment opportunity to respectfully request that the MBTA formulate, fund, and execute a plan to remedy the urban deforestation of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of mature trees that were raised, many unselectively, across the rail corridor during GLX construction. Again, that's from Friends of the Community Path, presumably in Somerville. Next one. From Dominique Stassert in Somerville also. Dear MBTA Rider Oversight Committee, some of us Somerville residents have reached out to you in the past to ask about reforesting the railway corridor on the extension of the Green Line. As a resident, I welcome the benefits that the Green Line extension will provide our city and others with. However, it is very unfortunate that the MBTA decided to remove the trees that were thriving along the tracks. The removal of the trees deeply affected the habitat of birds who also enjoyed them. I was surprised to hear that the MBTA had not consulted with tree experts, and more so that it didn't commit to replace the canopy. I am asking you to give us an answer at tonight's meeting. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Dominique Stussert, 47 Columbus Avenue, Somerville. And the final one is from Renee Scott. Oh, I'm gonna have to make this. Any concerns about me reading this based on the size of it? I'm happy to dive in if you want.
I would say give it a go.
Okay, cool. You guys are very forgiving. I'm trying to use my best announcer voice and dictation skills. From Renee Scott, I am a Somerville resident and was devastated when the rail corridor was clear cut for GLX work in 2018. I have come to understand that many of the trees presented a potential future hazard to the tracks. However, we lost untold benefits from these trees as habitat providers and carbon sequestering, cooling, and water uptake powerhouses. Somerville has some of the very worst air pollution in the Commonwealth, much of it right along the rail lines, which also are near the McGrath Highway and I-93. While necessary for rail work, the clear cutting was a huge loss to the community's environmental health. But all is not lost. I see this as an opportunity to do something amazing. This corridor would be a wonderful native pollinator habitat. This makes sense for so many reasons. Our pollinators are in critical decline due to loss of habitat. They are the keystone for life on Earth, the foundation of our food web. We need to replant wherever we can to provide them with food and a place to live. Native plants like sumac and wildflowers will not get big enough to be hazards to the tracks. If done properly, these plants could be self-sufficient, not requiring cutting, thus saving time and money from maintenance. The corridor area, long, thin swaths of land, is a key component to providing pollinator habitat. Few urban areas have large acreage, but rail lines are ideal ways to use existing land that otherwise is not desirable or even possible as parks and public gathering areas. There is a vibrant community in Somerville eager to see this plan happen. We would be very interested in providing assistance if needed. Warmly, Renee Scott, Somerville, Mass. I'll turn the floor over to anyone who would like to comment on that. Anyone first?
Can I raise my hand? I don't see a raise hand feature. All these participants.
There is a raise hand feature at the bottom of the, or in the participant list.
Yeah, I thought so.
And I have that up.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
I see
As
like,
presenters,
dislike,
we may not see it.
clap.
Is that?
There's
As
a
presenters,
more,
we may not see it.
Okay, all right, fine. I got you. I think that makes sense, Carl. All right, well, did we want to talk?
Yeah, Wig, I know, I think you actually mentioned this at the CIF meeting, didn't you?
I think he did. I mean, I knew that I'd heard about this in some context, and I was trying to remember the context. I mean, I hadn't heard about this. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, or it's happening. I think it's an important issue. At least I'd like to know why it was done. I mean, probably for the rails. I mean, but the process in which it was done, especially if it didn't include any public input. So I am trying to think of who to ask. I mean, I don't know offhand, but I can look into finding out who to ask about this. I'll also go through the decks for the FMCB to see if there was anything mentioned about it. I don't think there was, but I'll look through. Other than that, I mean, the fourth letter, I mean, with plan, I mean, an idea of what to do, I liked. I mean, I'm interested. I mean, I'm interested on an intellectual level. Just to understand more about the nature of the plants and why they would be good. Maybe even talking to the author of the letter. But if someone here, has a better background in plants and wants to pursue it, by all means.
So, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can, Weg.
Yep, go right ahead, Wig.
Thanks. Yeah. So, historically, I've not tried to overemphasize Somerville projects because I feel like we represent the region as members of the ROC, and but I did mention this just in passing at our last meeting, and it's a pretty big issue in Somerville. If those of you are not familiar with the corridor or haven't seen what's happened, it was basically clear cut, and some of the sections are literally 100 or 200 feet of hillside that were basically, mature 70-foot trees. And we're mindful of the issues of rail safety, certainly, but the Green Line project is separate from the rest of transportation process in Massachusetts. It was put into a design-build process overseen by John Dalton, which is not part of public process at the T or at the Boston MPO. It's an entirely separate project. It was done in order to make sure the budget was hit, and that was important. And it's proceeding very efficiently. But there's a big difference between how road street trees are treated and rail street trees. So in Massachusetts, if any 10 trees are cut by any project of whatever size that are over 14-inch caliper at 5 feet height, it's an automatic MEPA intervention and state environmental process. That doesn't apply at all to rail projects, which are exempt. And in this case, there were many thousands of trees cut and many dozens of very large trees cut. And so I think that nobody is asking for radically rebuilding a forest that would be dangerous to the rail. But there's an unevenness in how we've treated different communities. And you think of the Emerald Necklace between Longwood and Brookline, and that's a mature forest. Those are 120-foot trees within 5 feet of the rail corridor, and they overhang it on both sides. And we can certainly do something in Somerville that is more mindful of risk to rail travel and Green Line travel, but there has been absolutely no attention paid other than a seeding, a kind of a ground mat seeding to prevent immediate erosion of the hillside slopes. And the regional community path is coming through this corridor. So everybody who bikes from Lexington and Bedford through Somerville to downtown Boston will be in this corridor as well. And if you're familiar with the path corridor that exists now from halfway through Somerville, that is Lowell Street, all the way back out to Lexington, Bedford, it's a beautifully landscaped corridor, and it serves many purposes, including regional travel. It will likely be the most traveled walk and bike corridor in the northeastern U.S., right? Somerville and Cambridge are second and third to Portland, Oregon in density of bike travel already. And it will hook up with the Northern Strand that's coming down from Lynn, which is another regional path, and it will hook up with the Grand Junction path, which is coming across from Harvard Allston and Longwood Medical through Kendall Square and MIT to also, all of them will hook up in Inner Belt Somerville, right where the Green Line project is coming through. So we're going to need some process where we can get baseline engineering drawings of the project area from John Dalton and the project team, and work cooperatively with others at the T or on John Dalton's team, with ROC, whoever might want to be interested in it, in kind of re-greening this corridor for the longer term. And so this has Somerville and Chelsea have by far the least green and open space per 1,000 residents in the state. So Somerville's 351st and Chelsea's 350th. And they have the densest populations in the state, and they also have the most transportation pollution. And so we need to push back a little bit against that. And so I'll stop there. I think the activists in Somerville, the green activists, just wanted to raise this to people's attention and seek a way of collaboratively moving forward with the various transportation groups as well as citizens of Somerville.
Thank you very much, Wig. Alan Moore actually is watching from YouTube and typed a comment a moment ago. He's got a couple things. I'm going to read both. He started off, again, this is Alan Moore watching from YouTube, saying, there was no public comment. I'm sorry, start again. Alan wrote, there was no public input regarding the tree removal, and it seems to be in violation of MIPA requirement to review this significant change. But just a moment ago, he also commented, I guess I was wrong if Wig is correct that the tree removal was legal. And Alan Moore also just typed, I would mention that, you know what, hold on, I don't need to read it because I can just do this. Can people see that if I do that? I'll continue reading it anyway. Alan also wrote, I would mention that when this issue was brought up at the Green Line meetings, the answer was always, there's no plan to plant replacement trees.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. I would only add to my comment on the MIPA process, which I have raised with John Dalton. Although it's true that the MIPA automatic requirement for environmental filings applies to 10 street trees and not to rail corridors, I think it would be quite easy to challenge that on the basis of discrimination of other kinds of transportation corridors on general principles of law and practice. But that's not really, I think, what anybody's preference would be a hard challenge. The preference would be to start to think cooperatively. This project is less than 2 years from completion of the rail assets. And, you know, people are obviously, there was no opposition in Somerville to these projects. You know, people have the same cooperative attitude here that what folks want to do, it is over intermediate term, come up with a plan and start to make the corridor green in whatever way is appropriate for both the transit and the community and the other visitors who are going to use it.
Well, the T. Sorry about that. The T does have an environmental team, and I think they even have the word green in their name. I think I have the number or contact information for that person and can ask them, I mean, what they are thinking along these lines and what the T could do about it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I would say if there are other groups that are better, I mean, at handling tree issues, I mean, I would be happy to support them or happy to encourage the group to support them in whatever way that we can. And I would say if there was someone in the group who was a tree person, and I'm just using that term loosely, and it was able to just take the lead on it, I would follow them. I just don't feel as if I have the wherewithal to take the lead on it.
Yeah, so Len, that's a really good point, and I didn't think of reaching out to Andrew Brennan, who's charge of, I think maybe Andrew can confirm this, is probably still in charge of environmental process at the T. He was certainly critical in getting the Green Line going originally. So that's a helpful thought.
Yeah,
and there's no end of landscape designers that are happy to work with communities. Maybe we can find some outside seed funding to work with them. But I think people really just wanted to bring this to the ROC's attention and get some feedback from you. So I appreciate this time and this feedback.
Well, I'm very happy they did, and it's an important issue, and yeah, let's figure out what we can do to work collaboratively with people and encourage them to work with us. So I guess it's a matter of determining who's going to do what next. So do you all want me to reach out to Andrew, or do you want to reach out to Andrew Wig?
Well, I'm happy to do it if you think that's appropriate.
Well, I don't know. I'm happy to reach out to Andrew. Because I don't know. I'll just ask him and say, Andrew, is it appropriate to reach out to you on this? And he'll give me an honest response and go from there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll do that. So any other steps that should be taken in conjunction or after that?
Since we have Alan Moore watching the YouTube and participating by the chat, I guess maybe the question can go out to him. Is there a particular action item that you, Mr. Moore, would suggest? I mean, other than Len making that contact that you just mentioned, is there another obvious next step that we're missing?
Yeah. So I think Alan can type in answer to your question, Stefan. The other thing I would mention to you folks is that we have a fairly new but quite qualified urban forestry committee that's an official subcommittee of some Somerville government, appointed citizens. And I don't believe they can accept funding from outside because they're part of the municipal government. But I think they could be asked to participate. I think they would be happy to do that as well as one of the people working, one of the groups collaboratively working on this.
Okay.
And,
by the way,
and
I
there is
forgot
a
to.
forester. Sorry, go ahead.
Wig, go ahead. Go ahead, Wig.
Well, there also is a professional forester, young woman in Somerville, and we have two great parks planners. They do not have a lot of mass by numbers or by assets given to them in city government, but they're all qualified professionals, and so we can bring them in as well.
Who was that again?
The one thing. So Len, that's a professional forester, a young woman who's on staff at City of Somerville, and two landscape and parks planners who've been here quite a while, and they do a phenomenal job with limited resources, just phenomenal job. So there are those assets, but in order for them to succeed, given all the demands on municipal finances and resources, they need a lot of public support at their back. So we could reach out to them, but I think it would really be the interested public and the Urban Forestry Committee who would provide that push.
Yeah, fine. And so I'm totally fine with supporting people and reaching out to people that they may not have knowledge of or easy access to. I am concerned about us perhaps doing something that's already been done. So that if they're reaching out to these people already, and then I don't know if it'd be productive for us to reach out to them more so than to write a letter of support or something if they were to come up with some plan of action.
Yeah.
Well,
I think no one has reached out to Andrew Brennan because I think I would probably be the only one who should have thought of that. But the other groups are in contact with each other that I've mentioned. And a support letter would certainly be welcome too. And you and I can decide kind of one-on-one. I'm happy to get in touch with Andrew Brennan if you think that's more appropriate. Whatever makes sense, Len.
Well, you could certainly argue the case better than I can. You just have a bigger...
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I should have thought of it.
Okay, fine.
Before.
Fine. Okay, so yeah.
Thank you so much for the attention, everybody. I really appreciate it.
And
Yeah, I'm not sure if people saw on the screen share. Alan typed in two last points, and I highlighted them in red. He asked, but to whom at DOT would the letters go? And but then he says, I guess the request first could go to Andrew, see his reaction, and Alan says, following up, I can get back to the other letter writers. So it sounds like we've got action items on both sides from this.
Great.
Thank you very
Great.
much, Alan and Wig and Len for next steps on
I
that.
think there's a guy with a beard raising his hand.
Oh yeah,
Craig.
I forgot to acknowledge Craig, who came in about maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago. Hi, Craig. Hopefully the screen share is working okay, so you can see all the items there.
Stefan, can you hear me?
Sounds
Yep.
good.
Okay,
We
good.
gotcha.
Yeah, yep. No, I can see everything. I'm glad we have action items on both sides. This is good.
Craig, did you get caught up with from seeing all the notes that I'm sharing on the screen and then the conversation, or anything that you want to add? I don't want to leave you out.
No, I saw the I saw the notes ahead of time. I think my only question would be, other than the kind of tactical ask of dealing with this particular issue, do we know if there are MBTA policies on construction projects in terms of if you cut a tree, you have to plant a tree or something like that? Could we, beyond trying to fix the specific issue in Somerville, is there a policy change that we should be pushing for?
Oh, that's a good thought.
Oh,
Yeah, I sent some PowerPoints just with pictures that members of the committee can look at in their own time, just to show the corridor that's been cut. And I also, yeah, thank you. You can see, yeah. So, and I also sent some overheads from Google Earth about this corridor before, and also the Brookline LMA corridor in the green in the Emerald Necklace. So this is up right next to the tracks, but it wasn't cut it was on the side that wasn't cut. And anyway, so those pictures you can flip through on your own, and you can even see in each picture that there's quite a few trees that are more than 10 or 14 inch caliper. Those were literally 70-foot trees that provided shade to all those triple-decker neighborhoods. It's a high school. There were thousands of trees there too. Fortunately, that tree escaped.
so
That's near Somerville City Hall.
so I know this is like a niggling question, but on the Somerville site, you said there were thousands of trees there? At
Yeah,
the
well,
high
this
school?
is just little snippets of a multi-mile corridor.
But at the high school, you said there were thousands of trees?
Yeah, there was I don't know if it was a silver maple forest or what it was.
All right. All right.
That's not on the T. That's not on the T.
All right.
But you can see the size of these. These are 100-year-plus trees.
Well, a lot of times what happens is that the trees can't maybe be planted where they were removed, but they're planted somewhere else in order to offset.
Yeah, or yes, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
Len.
that's it. And then it's just a matter of who's going to bear the cost for that.
Yeah, and we can come up with a plan, and we can seek some outside funding if that, if that's needed. And Renee Scott's letter. If Renee's on, I'm going to embarrass her, but she headed up the community sewers that provided all the mats for Cambridge Health Alliance facilities in the last month. So she's a great contributor to the community. But she suggested in her letters that the plantings could be appropriately scaled for any concerns about risk in the corridor. That said, I did take about 5,000 pictures of trees in Brookline and LMA last weekend, and those are giant. 100, 150-foot trees within 10 or 20 feet of the tracks.
Yes, which come down with some frequency and disrupt the D line. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I get it.
yeah. So I would say
Did the incline have anything to do with it?
Well, it has to do with a couple of things. One, it's going to wash away if it's not replanted. And two,
in terms of why they chose to take them down. I mean, because it's
no, because this is the first go at the green line. The state transportation agencies can convince the state elected officials to allow them to do a non-compete bid. They said it would be more efficient and more cost-effective. And the group, the construction group and design group that was given to, went crazy with over-designed stations and over-designed project features, and it went way over budget. And the state stopped the project. And then the federal government intervened because it was the primary Clean Air Act project for the whole Commonwealth of Massachusetts was the Green Line project. And it had been put off when all these other road projects were done that supposedly added a little bit of clean air benefit. But the Green Line project dominated the clean air obligation of Massachusetts to US EPA and the federal government under the Clean Air Act and the Federal Transportation Conformity Regulations. So after a couple years, the state got put on federal probation, and they came within a couple months of losing $1 billion cash of federal money from that point on. And that caused the project to be recast as a tightly controlled design-build project under the new leadership of John Dalton, who was brought in from Chicago. Stations were minimized. They're just concrete platforms. And people had never asked for fancy stations. And, this can be upgraded a little bit later. So John Dalton has kept the project pretty much on budget and on time. It will be delivered within months of the due date. And as far as we all know, it is still on budget. So he's done a phenomenal job in that regard. But it is a sequestered project. It's like it's inside a bank vault. It is not got, they do have public outreach where they're good at explaining what they're doing, but there is no interaction with regard to the project features. So we've taken a lot of time. I feel a little bit guilty about that, but I certainly appreciate the attention.
Oh, this is definitely important, and I'm glad that we're able to have the input from folks watching on YouTube as well as this discussion amongst the members of the committee here. Just want to call out that Steve Mulder also made a comment from YouTube about this discussion about the thousands of lost trees, critical health and environmental issue. Again, thank you to Alan and Steve for watching us on YouTube. I think we said that we've got our action items, so unless there's more that we want to talk about with this, I think we can move on to additional agenda items. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Excellent.
Next items are the subcommittee reports. On the agenda, CIF was next.
Sure. Thanks, Carl. I'll give an update on our CIF meeting from Tuesday, last Tuesday that is. So I believe everybody should know we canceled our March meeting with the coronavirus coming in, but we did participate via Zoom last week. So obviously invite everybody to join us going forward. We're planning to hold a May meeting in the same fashion, and we'll send out the link accordingly and hopefully post it on the website if James can help us out with that. So for our discussion topics, we had a few things that we ran through. The first was an update from Len on some of the RTAG activities that are going on. The main focus right now is the TIP, and there is entering pretty soon into a public comment period I believe that starts at the end of April, which is now. I forget if it was before this meeting or after.
After.
After?
So the meeting is on Thursday, and I think the tip will then be released be probably the following day for a 21-day review period.
So as Len mentioned there, a 21-day review period, so a pretty tight turnaround, but I do believe we were going to try to get something drafted and submitted for comment on that if we could. So I know, again, it's not out yet, but more to come when that is released. Len, anything you want to mention about the RTAG meeting or the tip or anything on that before I move on to the next?
No, just that of course, RTAC is going to respond to this, and we're part of RTAC, and I am going to do my absolute best to get a letter out in time. It'll have to be approved before the next full rock meeting, so we will do that via email. So, and it probably won't be the longest. It won't be a long letter because there's just not going to be that much to comment on.
All right, thank you, Len. All right, the next thing that we talked about at our subcommittee meeting were some of the FMCB meeting highlights from the last couple of months. Some things that just want to highlight is there was a pretty good report out on means testing, looking at what impact that would have on revenue, and also kind of thinking about how that would be implemented at the T, and which what the qualification standards would be, what modes of transit it would apply to, and things like that. So I think we've talked about means testing before at the subcommittee, and I believe we're generally in favor. Is kind of my recollection. I don't know if we've taken an official position on means testing, but definitely think it's a step in the right direction for the T to study and explore and see what's right going forward. That was the FMCB update that stood out to me. Len, was there any other presentations that you wanted to highlight?
No, if you're focused on FMCB, I'm not going to say anything more except that for that means testing, I was really impressed with how serious the T is taking that initiative. I mean, they're doing some really, they're really developing a plan, or looking at how to develop the implementation of it. So there's a lot of detail, to the presentation. So it's not by any means being done, just as a show. It seems like they are serious about moving forward with it.
All right, thank you.
Question for you guys, since I happen to have the luxury of doing the screen share, and I'm looking at the last FMCB webpage, is there anything that would be particularly handy if I pulled up like one of the meeting PDFs? No requirement, just happened to have it up, so I thought I'd offer.
No, I think that was really the summary from the means testing. I think to your point, if there is interest, it is posted out. I forget which meeting that was from, but obviously do encourage everybody to go through and read through the updates, and I'm sure most people do. But no, Stefan, I don't think there's anything that would help to bring up at this point.
No problem. Thanks.
All right. Next time on the agenda was the Joint Transportation Committee legislation, and I know I'm just mentioning it because I think Stefan, you had it up on your screen, but there wasn't much we discussed with that. So we got into the next agenda items, which were the discussion of the commuter rail electrification and the discussion of West Station. So I know Wake also had and kind of mixed into this, we already discussed it at length, was the the tree removal in Somerville, but Wake had a decent amount of insight into rail electrification, thinking about what the long-term vision is for the T, but also making sure that the plan is not going to draw resources away, from the rest of the T. I think some of the things that Wake talked about were, some of the ways that the T is moving very slowly on this. I think that's evidenced by the South Coast Rail, which is rolling out as a diesel initially, right? And not not having a plan at the moment to electrify. That said, though, the T did pass some of the resolutions, I think in November, to start their transformation office, but so far that's been moving very slowly and hasn't really picked up steam in the 6 months that has been going on since then. But we are looking forward to the pilot projects coming out and getting towards a fully EMU system where we can shorten the headways and speed up the travel times along the corridor. And obviously, Wig very concerned with the and as we all are, amount of particulates coming from the diesel engines running through the neighborhoods around Boston. So Wig, anything you want to mention about commuter rail electrification? In a small time frame, I guess, just in the scope of the CIF update, I guess I would say.
Yeah, no, I thought you did a great summary. I've got nothing really to add to that. I think longer term, it is important to electrify, but also to wrap in the gateway cities. That might be the one thing that you didn't mention. Lynn is already kind of up at the head of the queue, which is appropriate. The North Shore needs economic development, but I think whatever we do for long-term vision, it has to include all the gateway cities as revitalized economic areas. But Brian, you did a great job. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Wig. So for next steps, I think what we were going to try to do is for a later meeting this year, get somebody from the T to kind of talk to us and really lay out what that vision is, what that looks like, and see where we can partner with them going forward. But that's where we're at right now. I think still early in the planning process for the T. And then the last thing that we talked about was just our agenda for the May meeting, and we're going to focus on the operating budget and also the report from the advisory committee on the operating budget. So a little bit of a financial focused meeting for the numbers folks out there, I guess. But obviously the operating budget that was planned for fiscal year 2021 is now out the window. So some of the things we're going to be looking at is how is the T adapting to the new environment. What's the kind of the outlook going to be? I know there's a lot of federal stimulus money earmarked just for transit agencies, and potentially that could really be a big boost to the T in their operating budget, and making sure that is used effectively. And there's definitely a plan going forward. So that's our focus. We also talked about bringing in Brian Kane, who is now Paul Regan's replacement on the advisory board, to talk with us. Len, I'm not sure if you have an update yet on Brian's availability for next month or not.
I do not have an update.
Okay.
And I will be in touch with him by
Great.
Thursday at the latest.
So I know Paul was a great guest of the Rock for very many years, but is I think retiring essentially from his existing role. So Brian Kane is a successor there, and hopefully we can form a new relationship with him going forward and get in recurring meeting invitations with him in the next couple of years as well. So that's our update from the CIF. Any questions from any of the members on the phone today?
Thanks very much.
Yeah, actually, I will throw out one quick question. I don't think, unless you mentioned it and it didn't register, I didn't hear any mention of the proposed electrification from North Station to Lynn being either in jeopardy or being dropped. As far as you know, is that still part of the going forward with electrification?
I've heard nothing that says that it's not. And Stefan, I thought that was one of the initial pilots, as it were. So that's my understanding. But again, I haven't seen much information published since that, the initial discussion back in November, where the T said they were going to move forward with this. So I don't know if you have more information that indicates that it might be in jeopardy. And Wig, I know you're also obviously closer to commuter rail, if you guys have any insight into that, but I don't.
Yeah, so it's basically Roxbury and Lynn are, as far as I know, still the two leaders of that effort, or lead targets.
I haven't heard anything to the contrary. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything that you had said.
Yep. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. How about
West Station project? Did you give an update there?
We didn't talk too much about West Station. I think the general sentiment there was that it kind of ties into the T as a whole moving slow on electrification. They're also moving very slowly on West Station, failing to commit to a short-term plan and kind of putting it off as, you know, as a longer-term objective. So again, I think we'd like to see that, or at least I'd like to see that as part of a shorter-term plan for the T. So disappointed with that. I know there's some financial or financing challenges that go into it, but I do think operationally it would benefit the area and also tie in, but EMUs are obviously a part of that and being able to get you know, capacity and throughput. So now we didn't have really much discussion about West Station. Craig, I don't know if you have anything that you know or would like to share about it, but that's where we're at right now.
No updates on my end. I was just curious.
Yep.
Great. Thanks very much, especially Brian. How about we move on now to next in the agenda, Marketing, Communication, Operations Subcommittee meeting reports.
Yes, I've actually not taken any notes on that, partly because it was our first Zoom for that subcommittee, but also a lot that we were talking about was sort of evolving information that we need to follow up on in the May meeting. The focus of the subcommittee was primarily the operations with regard to the COVID-19 and employee safety, rider safety, etc. Anyone else care to add to that? Because that's, I mean, I don't believe I have any specifics to share other than the general conversation topic that was, in fact, better part of an hour and a half, I think.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. You know, because, well, there's just so much uncertainty, right? And we just don't know, man, how the system's going to be utilized and to any extent and over the intermediate future. And so it's just hard to say, you know. And
I'll just add there that we were lucky to get Rob as a special guest. What's Rob's last name? Rob Guptill.
Yeah.
Joined us for the first half an hour. So I think a lot of the focus ended up being on understanding what service plans their bus routes are running currently. We talked through a little bit how the rear door boarding is working. We talked about how, as a result of rear door boarding, all fares on buses are free. There's no expectation to go up and tap or pay at the front. We talked a little bit about preparedness for staffing issues, in that because we don't have a unified fleet, because we have different sets of buses, not every driver is trained on every bus. And so if a particular bus yard is hit hard, it's not as easy as necessarily pulling over drivers from a different building. They may not be trained on the vehicles that are out of that particular yard or bus depot. So that was a lot of our focus. It was very tactical around understanding how the bus network is surviving, to a certain degree, I think, and everyone else can jump in here. It sounds like they're running a modified version of what would have been a snowstorm plan, and that was kind of their basis of a jumping off point to come up with the schedule. And what else, anybody else remember what Rob was saying in terms of how they are making, from that basis, they are trying to be very tactical and make changes on the fly where needed, to the extent they can, like adding in key routes to serve hospitals and some of those things. Anybody want to elaborate on that? Stephen, I remember that was a piece of what we talked about as well.
Well, I think on some of the crowded routes that are crowded in the mornings, I mean, they've added more buses to try to allow for more spacing on those. I mean, I can't remember if the 111 was one of those routes, but there are a few routes that are heavily used early in the morning, and they were still being heavily used even with additional buses in order to allow for more spacing. So they're trying to accommodate that. And yeah, it's a little hard, I think, to get really good spacing on buses. And so I think it's really going to be one of those situations where people are going to have to wear masks, because I mean, buses are just going to be a place where you can't be 6 feet apart. So you need to think of buses as like being in the grocery store, and you got to wear a mask. But Rob didn't say that.
Stefan, you asked about should you can look at it two ways, right? With the decreased ridership, should the T be running the smallest fleet possible? It should be leveraging the smallest vehicles because you get better gas mileage and because you're essentially you don't have full buses. Or conversely, your thought was, should we have the largest vehicles out running so there's the most space possible so people can spread out? So even if you have 10 people, they're as spread out as humanly possible. And that also tied back to you don't necessarily have, it varies depot by depot that you sometimes have a mixed fleet and sometimes you have a consistent fleet. So it's not necessarily an option to suddenly put out an entirely large fleet of buses.
Yep, that's exactly right. And with regard to the agency, public safety, pardon me, with regard to the agency employee safety, we learned that the very tragic, I believe it's still the sole fatality due to COVID-19 was a bus garage pullout inspector, and we learned that is a job at each garage which has contact with literally every single bus operator on a daily basis. So it's tragic, but unfortunately, I don't want to put words in the mouth of who shared that, but I think it was not surprising that that tragic fatality would be a pullout inspector, given the high degree of contact with other operators. But clearly, that's a lesson learned.
Oh, well, I guess, Stefan, I don't think that was intimated at all. In fact, I think there was no indication of where the person, contracted the virus. And so I think maybe the inclination would be to say it would be easy to come to that conclusion, but there was no way you could even approach that conclusion.
Oh, yes. Sorry, that's the better way to put it. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I guess I misspoke.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for that clarification.
No, yeah, I just wanted to make that really clear, and I haven't seen like day-to-day numbers in some official capacity. I mean, I see reports on one of the local news shows, so it's not really clear to me if the number of people infected that are bus riders or MBTA employees is going up at a steady rate, because if it is, especially 2 to 3 weeks after we've done all this social distancing, is still going up at a steady rate, that indicates something else is going on. And either the social distancing that we're working isn't effective, or people just aren't doing it, or something else is going on. But I don't know. And so I want to see some more numbers, official numbers, in the next 2 to 4 weeks, and compare them to what we got in a deck presented to the FNCV maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and also during the subcommittee meeting, I believe we talked about how the current vendor for cleaning vehicles had just been brought on a very short amount of time before the widespread COVID-19 outbreak, and I know it was mentioned during the meeting to find out about how that vendor has been performing, but I think we had a general sense that we weren't sure where to go for that type of information. Is that am I saying that right, Craig and Len?
Yeah, that's right. We brought in that brand new vendor a month before all this happened, and then we suddenly asked them to go clean every station once a day, or once a week, clean it 100 times a day. So I was curious in following up on in terms of, with under these extraordinary circumstances, is that, are the constant cleanings continuing? Is the vendor performing well? Is it a good thing maybe that, if it's doing well, then maybe the vendor switch is great, or have there been issues? We just didn't know where to follow up on that.
Pardon me 1 second. I'm typing a reply back to someone on YouTube. They'll just take me 30 seconds or so.
I didn't have anything else to add on the subcommittee. Len, did you have anything else to add on the subcommittee?
No. Except that the Zoom did work pretty well. I mean, so I'm looking forward to the next one. So that's it.
Okay. The one other piece of information that I wanted to mention was about the Keolis commuter rail operations during the pandemic. I have a report that Keolis did not issue PPEs to any of the onboard crew, particularly conductors, until I believe it was just within the last 10 days, well into the outbreak. So that's a level of operational care and due diligence I think we should follow up on. But on the positive side, Keolis, I have a report that Keolis has been running full sets of equipment without dropping coaches out of the commuter rail consists, which is allowing for a high degree of distancing. The distancing, unfortunately, isn't between the passengers and the conductors, because the conductors are still going through and collecting fares, punching tickets, although there is no cash on board. So even though there's no cash sales, that's been eliminated completely to eliminate the handling of the cash. The conductors are still going through the coaches. Obviously, they have to open the doors, but like I said, the PPEs were very late in coming, and the conductors are still passing through, punching and looking at passes. More to come on that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, because I mean, given that the ridership is down, like 99%, I mean, it just seems to me that they could forego that process, because there's just so little revenue collected in comparison to what they normally get. I mean, that for the safety of everyone, especially conductors, they should just like go get on the train and get off the train when you get to your destination. But that's just my opinion.
From the point of view of you folks who are normally just in the capital and finance subcommittee, I guess that's primarily Wig and Brian. Is there anything that jumps to mind where you'd like us to put out feelers and be digging a little deeper for operations and communications and such for our subcommittee?
Well, I guess maybe one reason for a little bit of silence on that is that, hey, we tend to go through the decks to the FMCB, and so a lot of times there are operational components that are in those decks, and we'll discuss those. And so
Sure thing. That sounds great.
Yeah, Wing and I are cross pollinators, so we can bring up stuff also.
Excellent.
Uh,
Then, unless
if I-
I'm missing anything, I think that concludes our reports from the subcommittee.
I heard
Stefan,
someone
this
say-
is Brian. I was just going to, I was gonna say nothing for me. Sorry, I thought Wig was going to come in, so I was waiting. Apologize for the silence there. So
No problem.
I'll think about it, but nothing comes to mind right now.
Okay, no obligation. Just thought to ask.
Yep. No, certainly appreciate it.
Oh, Andrew, I saw your hand.
Yeah, Stefan, just one thing I want to add to that. There's been some talk in my office about doing a review of kind of the transit industry's response to the crisis. And the sense that we have got is that it's a little early to do that, but when the time is right, that will be really important to sort of have a debrief. And it's likely that the MPO will be involved in doing some research into that on a nationwide scale, but MCOP would be a really great resource to be able to do that at the MBTA level, especially where you guys have developed some of those personal relationships. But I do want to stress that we want to wait until the time is right, because this is rapidly changing pretty much every day. And in my office anyways, we didn't think that it was quite the right time to start questioning whether certain decisions being made or not having been made were it wasn't the time to do that, and so I think once the storm has passed, we'll be able to sort of do a deeper dive into that. Just one thought.
Very well said. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the right time at all. So yeah, interested very much, but we'll need to wait.
Just on
Very
the
good.
commuter rail thing, understanding that ridership down there is especially low at this point. Is Keolis obligated to do some minimal level of service, or if they're losing money running trains, can they at some point say, sorry, we're just shutting down. We're not running service.
I think there are essential workers that use the commuter rail, so they're providing the service to essential workers. I'm pretty sure they're running a very reduced schedule. So whereas they're running full train sets, I think they are running, certainly not running a typical weekday schedule, but they're essential workers that need to get in. So that's why.
Yeah, I can expand on that really quick. Sorry, go ahead, Craig. Go ahead.
No, go ahead first, and I'll respond.
Okay, I was simply going to say that I do know that they did a very big PR campaign to alert commuter rail riders. I even heard it on several different news media outlets, television news and radio news, that there was a reevaluation of the commuter rail schedules for the benefit of the critical healthcare workers, and they iterated several times over schedule changes, particularly early in the morning. I heard that they had initially backed off on service to make it similar to a Saturday or a Sunday, but after some outcry from healthcare workers who needed to take early trains, they reinstated very, first of the morning, like 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. trips. So there has been from commuter rail a very, I want to say a close feedback loop with the healthcare community, from what I've been hearing.
No, and obviously they're the essential workers. I think I was more thinking at some point, if you're Keolis, if you're doing the right thing for now, but I'm just wondering, are they, and if this is me not understanding their contract that well, so that's shame on me for not understanding the contract, but is there a risk at some point where you're like, sure, we planned on doing the right thing and running trains with essentially nobody on them for the essential workers for the right first month, but at some point you're taking such a bath where you can't keep doing it, and is there a risk that these essential workers are not going to have a way to get in, or is this baked into the contract? And the T's paying Keolis anyways, subsidized by additional fare, so they have to provide some minimal level of service. Just an area to explore that I'm not familiar with.
I will check on that before the next subcommittee meeting, because I did hear on again on major media outlets talking about commuter rail service that there was shuttle bus substitution for several of the lines out of. Now I'll check that. At least one line. I don't know if it was several, but I heard mention on traffic report shuttle bus service replacing commuter rail on. I don't want to say because I don't remember for sure, but I'll look into that. Yeah, definitely there's a minimum level of service, and it was being provided by bus for one period of time.
Can I jump in? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead, Wig. Go for it.
Yeah. Most of the big hospitals have really great information on where their critical staff live. And they have probably shared that with folks at the T. They cannot they have to staff Mass General. There is no amount of economics that can get in the way of that.
Yeah, and to Craig's question about the financial state of Keolis, based on running service, my understanding is that the T is paying them. That's part of the contract, and I'm pretty sure the T was made whole for that money, by one of the stimulus packages. Because when I looked at the operating budget presented to the FMCB, you could see that where there was an operating deficit, and I'm pretty sure that also includes Keolis, but I'm not positive that deficit was filled by one of the stimulus packages. If it wasn't presented, or if it wasn't taken care of in that budget, I'm sure there's another budget where the Fed stepped in and made Keolis whole.
So, Len, put another way, Keolis is getting paid no matter whether they're running 100 trains or 10 trains, but so it's not a question up to them really. They're expected to provide service.
Yeah, and I can say that conclusively for the T, and I'm pretty sure it's the case for them for Keolis. I'm just not sure where the Keolis was in that operating budget.
Checking the time, I've got a little after 6:30. So unless there's anything else for subcommittee discussion, I think we can wrap that up and move on to public comment, unless there's any. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm skipping over an entire section. I apologize. We're at 6:30, but we missed the entire approval of minutes and external meetings, old new. Sorry about that. Any reports from external meetings and old business, new business before we go on to public comment a little later than on the agenda?
Well, the only external meeting, thing worth raising is what happened, at the most important thing that's happened at the recent RTAC meetings, which has been a focus on the tip. We didn't have our March meeting, but we did have our April meeting, and that was focused pretty much on the tip. And that's been the case pretty much for the MPO, although there are some other interesting presentations on metrics, but I'll wait for another meeting to talk about those.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, I guess as far as minutes are concerned, I hadn't seen any. Stefan, Carl?
I don't think I've seen any either. Carl, unless I missed them, did you get a copy from our MassDOT co-op?
No, I haven't seen them. I checked again today.
Is she around? Because she could very well not be around, right? Have you heard anything from her?
I have not, and I had actually asked them about using a MassDOT streaming and I didn't get any reply back.
Yeah. So yeah.
Hopefully they're okay.
Hopefully they're okay. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the undergrad or whoever was from Northeastern is just not around anymore. As in not around the MBTA anymore.
Yep, understood.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anything else before we move on to the public comments at the tail of the meeting for today?
New business, and I would say
Oh, yes, please go right ahead.
Yeah. So I would say probably for when you start thinking about new co-chairs, and so I would say anyone with a new beard is currently going to be nominated. Oh, he just walked away. Yeah. And so that would be Craig, and then Brian's going to grow one.
For the record, I am happy to, well, not more than happy. I'm happy and expecting to willingly continue being the tech behind the committee as far as coordinating the online streams, etc. Of course, I am prevented by the bylaws from continuing on as the full committee co-chair, but I can certainly assist the next co-chair.
Cool.
That sounds great.
Oh, Craig, I think Craig is coming back. So
Yeah,
Craig, did
Craig,
you hear?
while you were gone, we nominated you to be the chief cook and bottle washer.
Say that again, guys.
We were talking about nominations for the overall committee co-chairs beginning July 1st. Both Carl and I are prevented by our bylaws from continuing beyond 2 terms. So we're looking for nominees, and I was saying how I will definitely continue being the technical end of this, and I'm happy to assist whoever is the next co-chair, but we're looking for a nomination, and everyone took one step back while you were away. We'd like to nominate you.
I was even farther back than anybody else.
Well, think about it, Craig. So we would nominate you in May for the election in June, and then you start in July.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I almost feel like it's been harder to attend now that I'm home than it is in person. 5 o'clock rolls around and it's kind of like, all right, we've all been cooped up inside. We're doing work. Let's get the kids outside. Let's go for a walk. Let's try to get to space. Where when we were in person, it was I just rolled straight from work into other activities. My wife's usually taking the kids on Tuesdays to swimming lessons. Obviously not doing swimming lessons right now. So it's honestly become more of a challenge time-wise here from home, which is ironic. So let me take that back and think about that.
I hear you. No, I understand completely. I get it. And so well, we'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll have to change the bylaws. And extraordinary times calls for extraordinary measures. And just don't get any authoritarian notions there, Stefan. Like I'm gonna be MBTA co-chair for life.
Well, just because I have my mouse hovering over your mute button in the conference doesn't mean I have any notions of being authoritarian. Joking, of course. Joking.
Yeah, we'll do what we need to do. All right.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, I want to turn towards the public comment period we had originally had on the agenda start at 6:30. Can you folks still see the screen share that I have up? Because Tori has joined us from the land of YouTube and typed a couple of points, and we also have Claire. So I don't know if you folks can see that. I'm going to try to keep it in screen.
Yep.
There's a lot there. I'm not sure if any interest in me reading what they have typed, or is it enough to have it on the screen share, which is being recorded on YouTube, of course?
It's your choice, Stefan. I'm not sure Tori was on in the beginning, but we did have a pretty good reading of the comments at that point, and then the committee had a pretty good discussion. So maybe, I don't know if Tori can get. I guess she can't get on any other way. But Stefan, if you want to read it, I think it'd only take a minute or two.
Yeah, sure thing. Her username is Victrola39. Hi, Stefan. My concern is that we don't have a plan to reforest the GLX corridor in Somerville where the forest was raised. I would like to work on a design with GLX, the city, and whomever, go get as robust a reforesting of our area of the Green Line and beyond. Having the train tracks as pollinators corridors is essential at getting our insects and wildlife back. Planting with native plants to restore the ecosystem is a huge part of climate change preparedness and preventing species collapse. The concerned activist is looking into state and federal grants, help from the city, maybe using CPA funds to have a design. My worry is that though other construction projects have halted, the Green Line continues. We need to get this conversation going now and maybe even fast tracking the project before the entire Somerville corridor is lined with retaining walls with no thought to the need of, and that's the end of what Tori had typed so far. I get the impression there's more coming, but Claire also joined us saying that, Tori, speaking of which, we have a talk tomorrow, Amy and I, about urban insects, and Steve also just came back in, or was here the whole time and typed more. Very much agree with Tori's comments on this important priority. Even if we can't reforest on the exact same sites, it's critical we do so in the broader area, and agreement from Claire. We had a couple of action items. Would either you, Wig, or Len just give a quick recap for the folks who might not have heard at the end of the previous point in time? We have a couple of takeaways that we're going to pursue.
Well, this is Wig. Len came up with a good idea to speak with Andrew Brennan, who's long been the top environmental staff and at the MBTA, and there was also a lot of expression of support from the committee for the Somerville concerned citizens. Wish to get going on this, and so I think there was quite a good reception from the committee, and maybe Len or Stefan can add to that.
That's fine, Wig. I think you said it all.
Yeah, I appreciate the latitude again from the committee. I mean, this was kind of a fast-breaking issue in Somerville that's been kind of getting pressure in recent weeks and months, and I appreciate your letting this come to the forefront at this meeting.
Any other public comment? I guess I will ask that same thing in the chat as well.
Carl, I just wanted to mention I'm glad that we had folks joining us live on YouTube. Appreciate that. People coming with concerns and interest with what we're and the T are doing, and yeah, thanks everyone.
Yep, and I'll just reiterate for any folks who are watching on YouTube who didn't join us live at the beginning. This, of course, is all being recorded on YouTube, and it'll be available as part of the same playlist of past meetings. So you can go back and hear the more detailed discussion that we had within the first, I think it was about the first 20 to 25 minutes of the meeting was devoted to the GLX corridor deforestation and hopeful reforestation.
Great talking to everybody. I guess that's
Yeah,
my motion to close.
I was just waiting for one of the co-chairs to ask for that motion.
How about it?
Stefan, thanks especially to all your work.
Well, I'll second Craig's motion.
Okay, then we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Then I think we can wrap this up. Everyone, please stay healthy and keep in touch. Again, thanks for everyone who joined us from YouTube to contribute, and more to come for certain.
Thanks,
And
Stefan.
thanks. I'm going to wait. I will keep the meeting. I'll keep the Zoom meeting open until everyone else has disconnected, just in case there's any last moment things. But we can officially call this month's Rider Oversight Committee now adjourned. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Stefan.
Thanks, Stefan.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Andrew.